So then like the natural capita is just the services and resources provided by ecosystems. So if you think about like the Mississippi River, there's the service that it provides is good transportation, like barges go down it carrying shipments of lots of things, I don't know what, but then also there's fish for fishing and eating, so like families can eat fish and survive. Obviously it's not as important now to like get your fish from a live stream, you can go to any market, but before it was really good. And then also algae that lives in the river, they do photosynthesis as well, so putting like the oxygen back in the air for us and keeping it clean is a huge service provided to us. So now we're gonna go into the diagram portion of this. I just drew all over that. And a good thing to keep in mind is that systems are always in motion. Sometimes there's delays, but delays are often kind of good. That's kind of like the period that the Earth can replenish itself. So just the basic diagram that Donella Meadows kind of outlined for us is this. And you have your input flow going into your stack, and then your output flow coming out of your stack, and then also had some reinforcing and balancing feedbacks or feedback loops. But kind of to make it a little bit more easier to understand and more relatable, I drew up a different diagram with pictures. So we have the Amazon with lots of beautiful trees that are way prettier than I can draw. Right, and it's producing O2 all the time, keeping our air nice and clean. Lots for us to breathe in. And then we have this person over here. You got Big Mouth, so he's breathing out a lot of CO2, but luckily, like we have this symbiotic relationship with trees where we breathe out CO2 and we need oxygen to come in, but they need CO2 to come in and they put out oxygen, so it's just a nice little rotation there. And then we have another man over here doing the same, breathing out CO2, but it's okay, it's sustainable right now because there's more trees and they're producing more oxygen than the carbon dioxide that's being produced by the humans. But this man, he's feeling a little chilly. So he takes his axe and he chops down this tree to get the lumber for his fireplace. So this tree's gone, along with its oxygen. But his CO2 is still going out there. And then this man is feeling kind of hungry, so he wants to raise some cattle. So he takes his axe, chops down this tree to clear some land so his cattle can graze. So this tree's gone. So is its its oxygen. And then he puts in cattle. Should have been an art major. I'm also really good at making professor puns. So, what's up? But now this cow also breathes out CO2. And then cows are pretty gross animals. And they produce a lot of methane. And methane's really terrible for the environment. And so this lone tree here now is only producing a minimal amount of oxygen, and it's having carbon dioxide come in from here, and this guy, and then this cow, and now there's methane too that it can't necessarily do anything about. And then once this cow has to go get slaughtered, it's gonna go to a factory, which is spewing out even worse things. It has methane as well, and then sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen dioxide, and then also carbon dioxide. All of these things are really bad, and we're completely destroying our rainforest, which I believe the Amazon makes up something like 42% of the Earth's oxygen production, but we're just completely eradicating it so that way we can put in more cattle and then slaughter them. So the rate human beings are going at right now is incredibly unsustainable. And systems thinking kind of shows that. Well, not kind of. It does. It proves it. And then another kind of system or diagram to think about, we all are aware of bacteria, and and most of us had been aware of the effects of antibiotics and how well they are at eradicating diseases such as polio and what could have been the measles. But so you have bacteria. So doctors came up with antibiotics, which are really good at killing bacteria. But if you don't take your medicine, like the full length that the doctor told you to, if you think, oh, I'm feeling much better now, like I don't have to take these last 2 or 3 pills, yes, you do. Because pushing an organism to like the brink of extinction, but not fully pushing it over the edge, only makes it stronger. So now, you didn't finish your medicine, so now there's a new, stronger bacteria that's shown on the scene. So what do doctors do? They're like, oh, we can just make a new antibiotic. But then it's just going to keep creating more bacteria, more antibiotics, more bacteria, and we're just going to keep going in this endless cycle. But we can't break it because then we'll all lose and bacteria will take over the world. What? Would that be so bad? Who are we to say that the world belongs to us? Which we'll discuss more in ethical perspectives. But antibiotics isn't just something to look at in regards to medicine or humans, because going back to cattle, a lot of times people give antibiotics to their cattle to make them bigger and healthier and have a higher production of meat, so you have bigger food. And by food, I'm talking about cows, and a lot of people love steak. So then you're gonna have more steak. And that's for whatever reason, people are like, steak's really delicious, so only a certain amount of people should be able to eat it, and those people have to have a lot of money. So steak is really expensive, which means that there will no longer be, it's not gonna be like an easy commodity, like you would think, like, oh, there's more of it, so it can be cheaper, so then the poor people can have it. No, no food for the poor. And it all comes down to like decisions being made here by higher ups. And you might think like, oh, maybe like they'll have a soft heart and whatever and like want to help people. No, people are usually out for money. So then we have world hunger. Now obviously this isn't always true. Some people do have good hearts. And we'll go into like motivations for making decisions and why people do the things that they do and look at like good versus bad and all of that. So, have all this, and then I think that's all we wanted to talk about for the systems thinking. Oh, one more thing, kind of like the difference between the world systems and human systems. If you remember the timeline that I drew, like the first 4 or 5 things that occurred, so there's a Big Bang, and then stars, like a little bit while later, and then like life, and then like all of the human stuff started happening. So all of these really long lines here were the Earth systems, which were random and slow. So the Earth is just kind of like taking its time, and whatever happens will happen. But then when humans arrived, like we're like, no, we want to see progress and like make changes and do all this. And so all of these things were happening really rapidly, and we might be running too fast. We're gonna get tripped up on our own feet. So why does all of this matter? We're gonna get to that. So, the roots of environmental movement, or the American environmental movement, kind of was sparked by a few people. Some to briefly mention are Ralph Waldo Emerson. He saw nature as a concept. So, just to kind of further explain that, it's like the people that are like, oh my goodness, I love camping, but then they go out into the woods in a camper, and they just stay in the camper all weekend, away from the bugs, away from the dirt and everything. So they kind of see it as more of just like an idea, not actually like immersing themselves in it. Emerson, he wanted to turn to nature, and he felt that society was corrupt and that like people were bad, kind of. And then he also opposed Orthodox Christianity, and he wanted to focus his attention on the boundless potential of the individual. And then another man who was pretty good friends with Emerson, is Henry David Thoreau. And he says that you can't know nature unless you are in nature. So he's all about like the immersive idea of nature, not so much just like thinking about nature, but actually being in nature, like being a part of it. And he has kind of like a famous quote saying, "In wilderness lies the preservation of the world." So if we want to keep going as we are, we need to, again, like Emerson says, turn to nature and look at what it can teach us. And then I'll mention his name first. It's John Muir. He's a big preservationist. First of all, I just kind of want to touch on how all three of these guys are transcendentalists. And transcendentalism is influenced by Kantian philosophy, and Immanuel Kant was a philosopher. He's got a lot to do with the ethical perspectives as well. But when it comes to transcendentalism, it's taught that divinity pervades all nature and humanity. So they see like the divine in nature, and they see nature as above humans. That's all I was going with.